How these 10 candidates plan to harness the optimism for the future that suffused Reagan's candidacy then, given the country's current weariness after 4.5 years of war in Iraq, remains to be determined.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
Thompson was off by 10%.
Who's in the lead? The highest rated candidate at the moment, Ron Paul,
Y'all ready for this?
39%. Who's in the lead? And a mighty roar has just gone up from Ron Paul's supporters.
Suggest that we should look at foreign policy. I'm suggesting very strongly that we should have a foreign policy of non-intervention, the traditional American foreign policy and the Republican foreign policy. I tried very hard to solve this problem before we went to war by saying, declare war if you want to go to war, fight it and win it, but don't get into it for political reasons or to enforce UN resolutions or pretend the Iraqis were a national threat to us.
Of the serious contenders this evening, Pat, is there one who adheres closest to your conception of classic conservatism?
I think the closest, candidly, is probably Ron Paul, who is a pro-life libertarian who does not vote for big spending, who opposed the Medicare expansion, who opposed No Child Left Behind, who opposed the war in Iraq.
If you were president, would you work to phase out the IRS?
Y'all ready for this?
Immediately. And you can only do that if you change our ideas about what the role of government ought to be. If you think the government has to take care of us from cradle to grave, from cradle to grave, and if you think our government should police the world and spend hundreds of billions of dollars on a foreign policy that we cannot manage, the foreign policy that we cannot manage, you can't get rid of the IRS. But if you want to lower taxes, and if you don't want the government to quit printing the money to come up with shortfall and cause all the inflation, you have to change policy.
Don Luskin, who's your pro-stock market candidate?
I mean this in all seriousness, Larry. Ron Paul.
Who's in the lead?
Ron Paul.
Dr. Paul, how do you reconcile this moral leadership kind of role of conservatism with the very libertarian strain of conservatism, the Barry Goldwater conservatism that you represent? How do you put together what he just said with what you believe in a unified national purpose?
Well, you do it by an understanding what the goal of government ought to be. If the goal of government is to be the policeman of the world, you lose liberty. And if the goal is to promote liberty, you can unify all segments. The freedom message brings us together. It doesn't divide us. It brings us together. It doesn't divide us. I believe that when we overdo our military aggressiveness, what it does, it actually weakens our national defense. I mean, we stood up to the Soviets. They had 40,000 nuclear weapons. Now we're fretting day in and day night about third world countries that have no army, navy, or air force, and we're getting ready to go to war. But the principle, the moral principle, is that of defending liberty and minimizing the scope of government.
The only person who does, in my view, understand the war, the national security state, and the economic debacle coming our way is Congressman Ron Paul of Texas. That's about our only hope against somebody intelligent and all. Mike?
Dr. Paul.
I am absolutely opposed to a national ID card. This is a total contradiction of what a free society is all about. The purpose of government is to protect the secrecy and the privacy of all individuals, not the secrecy of government. We don't need a national ID card.
You are the leading advocate for freedom in Washington today. That's a tall order. Why do you want to be president?
I want to be president because I have this dream. I'd like to reinstate the Constitution and restore the Republic. And I think the Republican Party and all of Washington have lost their way. I certainly would continue on my earlier theme that foreign policy needs to be changed. Mr. Republican, Robert Taft, we have a statute of him in Washington. He advocated the same foreign policy that I advocate. I would work very hard to protect the privacy of American citizens, being very, very cautious about warrantless searches, and I would guarantee that I would never abuse habeas corpus.
I would say the best performance last night was rendered seriously by Ron Paul.
Y'all ready for this?